Hey, folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier. We're going to do some Mike's Instant movie reviews. I think I've got about three of them in me tonight. So, a little bit of backlogging. I did see two movies today. I did a double feature for myself. And what was the double feature? First, it was The Creator, which we're going to discuss right now. And then I saw a re-release of Beetlejuice. Don't say his name. So let's talk about The Creator 2023 sci-fi movie. It's interesting. I was listening to John Moxley's book today. Mox audiobook is a fun listen. And he referred to Highlander as one of his favorite films, but he said that Highlander was a sci-fi film. I disagree. I'd say that Highlander was a fantasy film. And I think those two genres, a lot of times people confuse fantasy and sci-fi. There's a lot of overlap. I mean, I guess you could say something like Dune or even Star Wars might have an overlap into both fantasy and sci-fi. But I kind of feel like Highlander is a fantasy movie. And the thing we're talking about tonight, The Creator 2023, I think this is a sci-fi movie. If you have any thoughts on that wonderful debate, for conventionists and all types of people, go ahead and leave them in the comment. Let's talk about this Creator movie. Well, I went to go see it. I wanted to see it on the big screen. Recently, a new friend of mine told me that he thought it was disappointing. So I kind of went into this movie kind of with like lowered expectations. I did not make a point to see this movie when it first came out. I could have seen it on the best, IMAX or a Dolby Digital screen. I waited, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I saw it today. I was the only person in the theater, which is kind of a thrill. But when I am the only person in the theater, I tend to conk out at times, and that's what happened today. We do have a question here, a query. Yo, Mikey, on Peacock, I saw Blood and Honey. It wasn't bad, but bad enough for four grade teachers to get in trouble showing them it. Um, that's funny, man. I haven't seen Blood and Honey. Is that the Winnie the Pooh movie you were telling me about? I think this is my buddy AJ was telling me about the Winnie the Pooh horror, which I missed that one. I had like a very small window because Winnie the Pooh, the horror film, only played in the theater here for like a day or two. Sorry, buddy, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen Saw 10. I don't plan on seeing Saw 10, Expendables 4, or the Denzel Washington Part 3, The Equalizer 3. I have this theory that I don't really like watching sequels unless I've seen all the prequels. The Saw movies, I saw the first one in the theater. I was pretty engrossed by it. I was also kind of disgusted by it, thinking that this is the type of movie that launches, psychopaths and the Charles Mansons of the world. But here we are at Saw 10, and I haven't seen one since the first one. The Equalizer, I'd probably be more into seeing. I actually did extra work on, I think, the first Equalizer. Denzel Washington actually touched my automobile while I was sitting in it, which was a big thrill. But I haven't felt the need to go see the Equalizer movies. My buddy Laza's checking in. Laza saw Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, nothing special. We have a little debate here going. Let me talk about this movie for a couple of minutes, guys. The Creator, what did I think? Oddly enough, speaking of Denzel Washington, it's his son who's the star of this thing. Gee, I wonder how he got his job. No offense to his son. I've seen his son in another movie, Tenet from 2020. John David Washington. He's competent. I just feel I don't know if he's actually that good to handle a movie and for the movie to really be awesome. Like he's fine. I just don't know if he needs to be the leading man. You know what I mean? Like just that extra layer of charisma. Who's that guy that I hate? The guy that's he's in everything. God, he's that actor that I don't like. He was in all the comic hero movies. The oh God, what's his movie? What's his name? That actor that I think is bland as pudding. His name is like Dave or Paul or Brian, one of these assholes. But basically, like this guy is kind of like that guy. Like just he's there. He's in a movie. But so what? The Dungeons and Dragons guy. Who am I thinking of here, Laza? And Scorpio. I'm going to look him up because now it's driving me nuts. Dungeons and Dragons, Chris Pine. Yes, Chris Pine, my least favorite actor. And I think like number two for my least favorite actor is John David Washington. Like if you had like a plate of eggs and a plate of bland white burnt toast, that could be like Chris Pine and John David Washington could star as the eggs and the toast. You choose which one plays which because they're both boring as hell. Yet they're big famous movie stars. Gee whiz. So anyway, Ken Wanatabe's in this thing. You might know him from The Last Samurai. Allison Janney is in this, the Creator movie. She was pretty good. There's a lot of characters in this movie. It's hard to keep up with. There's this whole thing. I mean, if you've seen the previews or whatnot, you've seen that it's really about AI. It's about the bots and the humans. And interestingly enough, there's this giant explosion that kills 1 million LA people, and that they blame it on the bots, the AI, and then the U.S. sets out to destroy the AI creatures. And then late in the movie, one of the AI creatures says it was actually a mistake by the Americans that killed 1 million of their own people, and they try to push the blame on AI. So I just thought about this recent Gaza, not to make light of the situation, but didn't they just have like this hospital explosion and both sides are blaming each other for it? And then I think about things like Pearl Harbor, and of course, Americans like to will blame the Japanese and say that's what got our involvement in World War II, and some might say that that was actually a conspiracy. And then you have things like the September 11th. Some people have conspiracy theories about that being an inside job. So I'm not condoning or condemning any of these theories. I'm just saying it was interesting that this movie, the creator had something like that. Uh, let's see here, buddy. Laza says, I like the Saw series, loosely based on real life serial killers like the Zodiac Killer. Also, the main killer thinks he's doing things for the greater good, as logic side of the torture porn stuff. Well, I'll take your word on it. Quite enjoyed the new Equalizer film. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I might see it. Mikey, Tupac and Biggie thing been going on all day. Everyone ties it to Puff Daddy, Sean Diddy Combs. This is interesting. Well, I'll have to do some research, buddy. I mean, if you're telling me that Mike Tyson, I mean, not that he's the Encyclopedia Britannica, okay, but if Mike Tyson's claim and Ice Cube, I would actually take his word for it more than Tyson. But if they're putting some blame on Sean P. Diddy Combs, that would be quite interesting. Of course, Sean P. Diddy was buddies with Biggie Smalls, notorious B.I.G., Big Papa, if you would. And so a lot of this 1997 stuff is still haunting us, isn't it? I guess that's our version of like the JFK stuff, and probably before that, like people in the 1920s were still trying to figure out if Abe Lincoln was the victim of a conspiracy. So in my parents' generation, it was probably, John F. Kennedy. How did he get shot? Blah, blah, blah. And for us, it's like Biggie and Tupac. You know what I mean? So interesting. And Cobain, for that matter. You got to put Cobain in that conversation. What else? So going back to this movie, did I love it? Did I hate it? I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you folks. I did conk out a few times. I mean, that's part of the problem with me. If a movie totally doesn't arrest my senses, and if I'm tired, I'm often going to fall asleep right in the theater. And especially with nobody else in the theater, I basically had the nice, cozy, reclining seat to myself. I could take off my shoes. I could take off my socks. I did see that, buddy. The Marvels, the female-led Brie, and all these women in their tight suits, very good. I saw the Expendables yesterday. Yeah, I mean, exactly, buddy. I mean, lots to say. I saw the Expendables. My biggest piss off with it, outside of mostly enjoying it, is that the other Expendables films is the stupid logic of some of the fights and how they win, etc. I hear you, buddy. I mean, the Expendables are not. I think I actually saw the first three, and I don't think I liked any of them. and I think I'm just tapping out. You know what I mean? Like even now, it costs me less money to see these movies because I have all these subscription plans to AMC and Regal and Cinemark. But yet, do I really want to give these assholes 2 hours of my life? I mean, I like Randy Couture. As you know, I've interviewed Randy Couture. Big fan of Stallone. Big fan of Schwarzenegger. And I don't know if Ronda Rousey's in this thing or Stratham or whatever the fuck. I know that in one of them, the Dolph Lundgren became the heel. That was a good one, or at least he was good in that one. But I don't know. I wasn't really dying for another Expendables film, and I'm not really dying for another bunch of films. I mean, the Von Erichs movie is probably the movie that I'm looking forward to the most, to be honest with you. The Iron Claw and so forth. So what else? Okay, the creator. I really felt like I was watching a movie that maybe like this is kind of an interesting take, but I feel like this movie could have been done a little bit differently in its distribution. Maybe it could have been a streaming service series, like instead of cramming it into I think it was like a 2 hour and 15-minute long movie. It felt like there was more story to tell, but it was really kind of long as it was. I felt like maybe this should have been a series. I feel like there's a whole world to this movie, like, and I'm a person that doesn't necessarily want to sign up for all these different universes. All these cinematic universes can go fuck themselves. But in this case, I felt like there was enough meat on the bone here that maybe they should have gone longer and not shorter. And maybe this would have made a hell of a nice series. Possibly, maybe there could have been two movies in this. Like if they had just shot another half hour or whatever the not, or another hour of material, they could have broken this up into two movies instead of just one. I did feel like it was a little bit too long for the feature, but they did have a lot of cool stuff in it. So I felt like the tempo or the mood, something was kind of draggy, but like within that platform, there was a lot of good stuff in this film. I mean, I think the creations, if you were, of the AI, some of them looked like R2D2, on steroids, but some of them were very unique looking. Even the droids or the AI people, they had like the human face, but then like the android neck or whatever. I thought that was pretty cool looking. I mean, I did have a lot of flashbacks to things like Blade Runner, but Blade Runner had so many different incarnations. Like they did so many director's cuts, indie cuts, whatever the fuck cuts. My biggest beef with Expendables was number two, where Sly Stallone absolutely kills John Clan Van Damme, which was complete and utter bullshit. I hear you, buddy. Well, who's writing the checks? You know what I mean? I mean, that's just, Stallone. I mean, I don't even remember that. I take your word for it, but Stallone's writing the check. Blade Runner, I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, I've seen Blade Runner in the theater 3 or 4 times. It's still not, it's not one of my favorite movies. I always go see it whenever they do a remaster of it, but it seems like they've done Ridley Scott's version and Renegade version and Dick in the Ass version. They've done so many fucking versions of the Blade Runner movie, but I've seen them all. I've seen them. And I kind of feel like this is where we might be headed with the creator. I feel like this movie could be one of those slow burn type of deals. Although I did check Tomatoes or whatever the fuck, and it seems like it's a split audience. But I think a lot of people did like the movie. Some people think it was long and boring, and a lot of stuff we've seen before, which I think is true. But a lot of people do like this movie, so I can see this movie kind of doing well, like just floating around, you know what I mean, in the hemisphere. Is there need for a sequel for this thing? Probably not. Would they make one? Probably, if there was enough interest. So the creator, what's my final words on this one? And I'm gonna get into my Beetlejuice, and I might even do my review. Although I wish I was a little more awake to do my review on the my friend's movie. But I think I'll just wrap this thing up and I'll catch you when I'm going to do the Beetlejuice review. Overall, I think if you're a sci-fi nut, if you still have time to see this thing, oddly enough, it's like probably better to see it in the theater. But I wish they would give you like an intermission. I guess what I'm saying is don't go into this theater if you're half tired like I was. You know what I mean? I don't even remember Blade Runner 2 from 4 or 5 years ago, buddy. I trust you. I mean, somebody told me tonight that they made a Hocus Pocus 2 like a year ago. I don't remember that. I remember that I just saw the original Hocus Pocus for the first time. Um, basically, whatever the fuck, last week. So I'm kind of behind in some of this stuff. All right, folks, stand by your YouTube or whatever streaming you're watching this on. I am going to return with my thoughts on Beetlejuice. All right, be back in a minute.